In this video we're going to look at how to create an export filter for taking records out of the CRS in a format that's suitable for reading into other programs. For this video we're just going to take a few records and run through the steps that you can go through to export those records in various formats. So we'll just take the first three from this list. To export records you go to the Export button or choose one of the export menu items. Either way you end up at the same place in the CRS export module. There are several options for export. The ones that we're going to talk about here are exporting to two different format types. The first is to export to RevMan, and the second is to use your own export filter to decide how you want the fields to look when you export them. The default, when you come into this screen, is to use the built-in RevMan export filter. So if you were going to export these records for import into RevMan, you would simply click either Preview to view the records or Export to produce an export file. If we click Preview, we get a little screen pop up which shows us what the records are going to look like when we export them. And what you'll see with the RevMan export file is that there's more fields in there that you'll be reading into RevMan. So for example, you have the mesh terms in here and a few other fields that RevMan doesn't care about. And the reason for doing that is to give a full export of the record from CRS. So if the process for importing records into RevMan changes in the future, we don't have to come back and change the CRS. If you import these records into RevMan, then the fields that it doesn't care about will just be ignored. If you want to export to something other than RevMan, then you need to have an export filter. And what we'll do is just talk through quickly the steps that you need to go through to create an export filter. We'll choose Use Export Filter and we'll click on the Filter Wizard button. What that says to us is that we're going to create a new export filter and we're going to call it something. So let's call it Test Export Filter. If we wanted to, and we had another export filter that we wanted to use as a template, we could copy the existing export filter by using this function here. So we've given the filter a name. We're going to move to the next step. The two important things that the export filter wizard needs to know about is for tag text fields, what is the record break and what is the tag delimiter. And you can click on either of these buttons here that'll give you more information about what it's expecting. For the record break, it needs something to tell it the format that you want to put a record delimiter. So you might want to say record 1, for example, or you might want to say 1, depending on the style of output that you want to create. What the CRS will do is to take that style as a template, and for each record it'll put that as the delimiter between the previous record and that record. And it'll replace the number with the number of the record in the data set. The other thing that CRS needs to know about for export is the tag delimiter. A tag delimiter is usually a colon or a hyphen. In this case, we're going to use a colon. So that's the key data that defines the tag text output format. The next thing we need to do is to add some fields that we want to be exported. We do that by clicking Add Fields, and we go to the pop-up field list and choose the fields that we want to export. Well, for the sake of this demonstration, let's export author, let's export DOI, we'll probably want to export mesh headings, we'll want the original title, we'll take the pages and the title. But we could choose any of the fields that are in the record type. Click Confirm. We see that we now have these fields in the list of fields that we're going to export. We can then go and look at these fields and decide on how we want to export them. So if we click on author and then click on edit, we can see what's going to happen here. So the field name is author. We're going to export it with a field tag of AU, but we could go in and change that if we wanted to. We can put in some boilerplate text if the field's empty. Then we have to decide what we're going to do with multiple lines. And the reason for this is that we have the option of either outputting authors, in this case, or any multiple valued field, either as one value per line or concatenating all those values into a single line. In this case, let's just keep the default value of exporting them as multiple lines. What that means is there'll be an AU tag followed by the delimiter, followed by the field value, which will be a single author in this case, for each of the authors in each of the records. We can also make some edits to the text as we're exporting it if we want to. We can insert some fixed text into the field. We can put some text at the start of a field. We can put some text at the end of a field. And we can put text at both the start and the end of a field. And that's quite a useful feature if you need to manipulate the data that you're exporting in any way. We can also do a find and replace on fields. So this is a global find and replace for export only. It doesn't change the value of the records in the CRS. We can tell it to find all occurrences of a particular string and replace them with a different string. The final thing we can do is to choose how we're going to export the individual fields. Some of the options don't apply to all fields. What we might want to do, though, is to add or remove a full stop. So what we can tell the export to do is to say if the author field does not contain a full stop at the end of it, then add one. Alternatively, we can say if it does contain a full stop, we can remove it. We click Save for that field and go on to the next one, and we can go through all the different fields and make those settings for each field. One thing we might want to do in title, for example, we may well want to remove the full stop if there is one from the end of a title. The other thing we might want to do is to set the title or the journal as title case. We can do that by clicking the button to set it as title case. Click Save on that one and perhaps have a look at Pages. If we click on Pages and click Edit, we can see that we have an option to set the paging style. We click Use the paging style. We can either display the full pages or we can change the page display to show abbreviated pages. Click Saved. Then all we need to do is to click Save on the filter, and that filter is now saved and we're going to use it for these records.